9/11 aircraft. Why fly so fast? After releasing 9/11 World Trade Center attack, 9/11 Intercepted, and Skygate, pilots for Truth have been asked questions regarding the excessive aircraft speeds reported. One commonly asked question is, if it is impossible for a standard 767 to perform at the speeds reported, why would the alleged terrorist or elements within our government fly the aircraft so fast? Well, first we must note the aircraft which have been observed striking the World Trade Center have never been positively identified as standard Boeing 767s. But we'll get a bit more into that later. Let's start with the terrorist side of the question. Those who make excuses for the government's story and blindly follow whatever the government tells them claim that the terrorists didn't care how fast they flew, as they were going to crash the plane anyway. Somehow these people can suddenly read the mind of a terrorist. But at the same time, it is also claimed the hijackers had flight training, including private and commercial pilot certificates. Pilots are taught from day one that if you exceed certain speeds, the aircraft could fall apart around you. Here is a basic airspeed indicator that you will all find in a small aircraft, such as a single-engine Cessna, an aircraft in which the claimed hijackers were allegedly trained. It is pretty straightforward and color-coded so that even the layman can understand airspeed limitations. The green arc is the normal operating range and our safe speeds. The yellow arc means caution and is a safety margin, although structural damage can occur inside the yellow arc. The red line means just what one would think: danger. Pilots are taught that if you exceed this speed, the airplane will suffer structural failure. Does this mean the airplane will break apart at 1 knot above such a speed? Well, it depends on varying factors, and this is covered in detail in our presentation, Skygate 9/11. However, it is pounded into the heads of pilots during training that if you exceed such a speed, you risk structural failure, which is why it's called redline, and precedent has proven such an ultimate limitation. Once a pilot transitions to jet aircraft, the airspeed indicator is no longer color-coded, because by this time, pilots are well trained on airspeed limitations. However, the, quote, red line is still there. Pilots refer to it as VMO, or the barber pole. This needle indicates the maximum operating limit of the airplane. Keeping it simple, like the red line on a basic airspeed indicator, pilots know that if you exceed this speed, the airplane could fall apart around you. This instrument is the type that would be seen in a 757 or a 767 cockpit. Once you exceed such a limitation, a very loud and annoying noise permeates the cockpit and your head through your ears. This is what it sounds like on a 767. This sound cannot be silenced by a button or circuit breaker, as can other cockpit alerts. The only way to stop this annoying sound in your ears is to slow down the airplane. This is what the alleged hijackers would have been listening to for several minutes while trying to line up with their targets, if what we have been told were true. Now, if the hijackers have a private or commercial pilot certificate, as alleged, they would have been trained to never exceed such speeds or the airplane may fall apart. If they had somehow forgotten their training, they have a visual limitation on the airspeed indicator and a loud noise reminding them to slow down. In fact, even the technical experts who developed Microsoft Flight Simulator understand such limitations. The question now becomes, why would they continue to accelerate after being trained that the airplane could fall apart at any moment? If they wanted to complete their mission, it defeats their purpose. Now let's look at if elements within our government were involved. This is the radar data directly provided by the 84th Evaluation Squadron at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. This is the radar track of the target which impacted the South Tower. A reminder, this aircraft was never positively identified as N612UA, also known as United 175, nor has it been positively identified as a standard 767, which is why it is depicted with quotation marks. Here is when the target diverts from its flight plan. Notice shortly after, the F-15s are launched from Otis. Shortly after that, the target aircraft starts its final descent and accelerates beyond the maximum operating limits of a standard 767 and continues to accelerate at more than 150 knots past such a limit. It is as if someone tipped off the people controlling this aircraft, whether remotely or directly, or, if in the case of the government story, tipped off the hijackers that fighters are airborne and closing in. The next question most commonly asked is, if a standard 767 could not perform at such excessive speeds over the max operating limit, what could? Pilots for 9/11 Truth do not speculate, nor have any of the aircraft been positively identified. So therefore, we don't know what specific type of aircraft was used. If we had the answer for such a question, we wouldn't be here. The videos represent a 767, but obviously we cannot see details of the external structure, nor the internal structure, nor examine the engines internally from blurry videos and photos of smashed parts. What we do know is that the 9/11 aircraft outperformed a standard 757 and 767 by a wide margin, including other types of aircraft which have suffered loss of control or structural failure when exceeding their limitations. This is not in dispute. The only way to achieve such performance above and beyond the capabilities of a predecessor aircraft is to modify its structure, internally and/or externally, and power plants. Many aircraft are modified for increased performance from their initial prototypes. The 767 has been modified for increased performance more than 6 times, and these are just the ones which are declassified and in the public record. Several more have been modified for military use. Although some are in the public record, we don't know to what extent nor details of the modifications. The 747, the 757, many aircraft have undergone modifications for increased performance from their predecessor or prototypes. If this was done to the aircraft observed on 9/11, then what we've been told by our government cannot possibly be true. This is also probably the reason why none of the aircraft involved on 9/11 were ever positively identified through the limited parts recovered. For detailed analysis, please visit pilotsfor911truth.org.